I just wanted to start this off by letting you know Arlene's going to go through and talk a little bit about the work that's been going on with the Local Foods Hub, just to kind of set the stage for the agenda of what will happen today. And then we're going to have Jason Eden speak a little bit about the solar thermal high tunnels and that impact to the food hub. And then we're also going to be able to have each of our speakers, and I'll introduce them each, come up for a few minutes each of our supporters that have helped this initiative along the way. We'll be excited to hear why this work aligns with their philanthropic or their organizational mission and objectives. So that'll be great information for all of us. And then we'll have lunch by Prairie Bay, the food truck. It will be a buffet line. We're very excited. It should be great food, utilizing local foods. And then we'll have, and our speakers will be also during lunch. So we'll go get our food. We'll come back in here just so that you know. And while you're eating, we'll have folks use the mic so as you're crunching and munching the veggies, we can hear everyone. And then after lunch, we should conclude by 1 o'clock, and I'm strict about keeping us on task, and so we'll have an opportunity for all of you to get a tour of the farm who are able to stay and kind of take a look around and ask lots of questions. There will be a Q&A period, obviously, more towards the end, so I'd ask you to kind of think about your questions and hold them a little bit, and we'll open up the floor to all of your questions. And please feel free to ask anything. Nothing's off the table. So with that, Arlene Jones,
Can everybody hear us good enough without using the microphone? When I had to move, we were going to do this outside, and of course the weather wasn't very cooperative today. And then when I thought, well, let's just go into the house because the house has great acoustics anyway. And so if you have, we don't think so highly of ourselves that we have theatrical lights in here. We actually had a play with CLC here in July. I sat in an Irish pub, and it was absolutely fabulous. And so I knew that voices would carry really well in here and thought it would be kind of fun. A little bit of history about the farm, and then we'll talk about the food hub. Bob and I bought the farm about 9 years ago. It was very dilapidated and abandoned. And within the last 9 years, every brick, stone, every piece of equipment, every flower, every rehabbed barn, Bob and I have put into this. And it has been a labor of love and sometimes a labor of hate. But it's a beautiful piece of land. It's provided wonderful opportunity for us to use it for community integration and to be seen as a community partner in helping to build greater and stronger partnerships in our community related to, of course, local foods, but also as a destination for families to come to. So if you get to stay for the tour, we'll take you on a hayride. And if you're so brave, you can go through the corn maze, which is actually probably one of the most challenging corn mazes we've ever built. This building here is 18-inch white oak reclaimed Amish barn out of Baldwin, Wisconsin. We bought it from Big Wood Timber right up here down the road, and then we've modified it a little bit to include a packing shed on the back in order to meet some of the food safety requirements that farmers are faced with. So if you have any questions about any pieces, the farm is completely open to you after today. You are free to go wherever you want. The only thing that I ask is that you pay attention to the llamas and alpacas. They lean over and like to smell your face, and don't go behind them because they are, after all, animals, and they will kick you. So, so the history of Sprout and local foods in our region for us started with when we bought this farm, and we're looking at ways to diversify our markets and to build avenues for revenue because, after all, everybody has to make money in order to eat. So we started working with our first real champion of local foods in this region was Prairie Bay. And we began a relationship with Prairie Bay to begin with, knowing that they were utilizing more local foods than anybody. And this was really before Farm to School took off, before we started seeing all of the movement and great work into Farm to School. And moving forward from that, we've always had the CSA, and moving forward from that, we started to branch out to other like-minded individuals in our community who we knew were going to help us champion local foods. And one of our very earliest partners was Matt Taylor with E Squared. 20 cucumbers at a time was a success for us. 20 pounds, if we could get 20 pounds of cucumbers out onto the street, we thought we were doing a really good job. So then back in about 2010, when the University of Minnesota started putting its resources into Farm to School and held the first Farm to Cafeteria conference in our area, there was kind of an event run by Brett Olson of Renewing the Countryside of speed dating, where farmers could meet people who had purchasing power and buying power, and those who were working in the field that had the capability of buying local foods. And that is where I met probably one of the biggest champions in our region on the buying perspective, and that is Miss Colette Polkamp, sitting over there with her Farm to School shirt on. I have to tell you in no uncertain terms that if it weren't for her ability to very, very effectively lead her staff, we wouldn't be where we are today with Farm to School. And from there, we started with our farm in one school. Of the 13 kitchens in Brainerd School District, we started with 3 kitchens, 1 farmer, and we did about 1,000 pounds of food off this farm. And that was, I'll tell you, if you went from 20 pounds to 1,000 pounds of food, that was like how much percentage of an increase? But then when Colette and I sat down and started to strategize, how do we continue to build this partnership between local farmers and those who have buying power? Well, how do we structure that, and what would that look like? And we actually met in March to build September and October menus so that I had a tool to go out to farmers and say, look at this. If we can grow these products that they're going to serve in September and October, we have a guaranteed market, and I need this to be a collaborative effort between numerous farmers in the region in order to have that much volume to do a school district. And that's basically where it started. We went from 1 farmer to 4 to all 13 kitchens in the Brainerd District, Pierce School District. We are now doing staples, both CLC campuses, Prairie Bay, Grandview Lodge, the Shine, and many other, Riverwood Hospital. We're doing some healthcare systems. We've increased our CSA. We are working with about 33 different area farmers from an 8-county region, which is nothing short of miraculous in only 3 years. In order to have the infrastructure and the human resources necessary, which as it turns out are the 2 biggest barriers in building local food hub systems, is where does the infrastructure come from? How do you sustain it? And then how do you gather the human resources necessary to do that work? Because it is a lot of work. It's like running any business where any small business owner knows you do all the marketing, you do all of the business, the books, you do all of the physical labor, you go to conferences so you can learn to do things better, et cetera, et cetera. So that's where we started looking at, in partnerships with Happy Dancing Turtle, ARI, the Small Business Development Center, Region 5 doing a fabulous job helping to bring all of these teams together in order to start having the larger conversation of what would it look like if we had a food hub in our region? What would it look like? What would it take? And then we started with the real hard work of sitting down and putting some numbers to paper, which Julie Anderholm and the Small Business Development Center did a brilliant job helping us get there. And BJ, who's not here today. We're very, very sorry about that. So we did the work of a feasibility study with some help from our funding partners on what would it look like? Is our region even capable of producing and consuming enough food to have a food hub in our region? And how much food would it take for us to have to grow and sell in order to support and sustain a food hub? And that is quite literally how Sprout, Minnesota was formed, by actually going back and starting from, this is where we want to go, but in order to get here, we have to start here, and doing that incremental work step by step from thinking largely and how big we would want it to be, and putting those numbers to the paper and actually getting to where we needed to go. But did we stop there? Nope. We thought bigger and broader than that, and we thought, well, how do we take the passion for the work that we're doing with all of the community partners that we have that are engaged in this work, and how do we branch out and start actually building better bridges to other pockets of farmers in our region who don't have access to fair and equitable markets. And so we added that to the pocket of pools that we're working with. So now we're working with 5 Amish farmers who all farm out of Todd County, who don't have access to the markets because of cultural or transportation barriers. So they don't use telephones, and they don't drive cars. And so what we've done is we've actually sat down at their kitchen tables and engaged them in conversation of, we know that you guys have the capacity to grow. We know that you want to be included in this fabulous work that's going on. How can we make that happen? And so we've worked with numerous farmers in the region and sat down and said, how do we get the product from the field to market with some of those barriers of no transportation, no communication, and no refrigeration? So we really thought hard about some post-harvest handling and connecting that to they harvest, we pick up, and it's moved immediately, and we're taking care of that. And now we have, like I said, 5 Amish farmers. We're bridging gaps with Latino growers over in Long Prairie, and we're getting that product to market. With 3 school districts in central Minnesota, 3 public school districts, 2 community college systems, 2 hospital systems, and numerous resorts and restaurants that we're doing. Our goal this year was to do 100,000 pounds of food, and we're at about 60,000 pounds right now. And we just collected 4 great big bins of squash. So if any of you all want squash before you leave, come see us at the store. From the Amish farmers yesterday. So then, did we stop there? No. We decided that if we were going to truly have a sustainable food hub in our region, we were going to have to seriously take a look at the limited growing season that we have here in Minnesota. We already had a lot of infrastructure on the ground with high tunnels through some NRCS funding, with a lot of us farmers getting high tunnels through that grant process, but we still only could grow maybe 5 months without additional fossil fuel resources being used in order to continue to heat those tunnels. So we wrote grants to build some solar thermal high tunnels in our region to truly test the capacity of our region to be able to grow using that solar capacity. So we put 2 sites in this region, both on farmers that had the capacity to grow and contribute to the food hub, because that was one of the conditions. The food that's grown in those tunnels is going back to the food hub and back into the communities that we're working with, including the school districts. So we did that. We wrote and we did some solar thermal, and Jason will talk more about that, so I'm not going to talk more about that. I'm excited about that because it means that I have a longer growing season, but I also want to test I want the research. I want to know how well is it going to work, and how do we continue to build these systems in this region where, especially this year, our growing season couldn't have been more than about 90 days. And if you look at the northern part of our state already, they're frozen already. They froze out from Hibbing on up way back in September 4th. Imagine they probably had 70 days of growing season up there, and that's not sustainable. So we wrote and we built some solar thermal technology into those grants. And then we decided that we were going to branch out even further than that. And in a very informal discussion with a great friend of mine, Matt, he said, you guys should look at some biodiesel and some straight vegetable oil technology out there on that farm. You guys are already doing all this other really cool stuff. You might as well look into that. And it planted the seed inside of me that said, he's right, we should. And I know exactly who that community partner is. And so I started talking to Bob Schaefer from Central Lakes College in Staples. I said, Bob, how does that work, and what would it look like? And I was intrigued, and I thought, I think we can do this. And so, by golly, there is a Ford 800 Cummins diesel sitting out in the driveway. For those of you that haven't seen it, that has been converted to straight vegetable oil, has the biggest, baddest billboard on the side. That is, I'm so excited. I can't wait to drive it. And it, we entered into that another, partnership with a community member in a public partnership where not only did they help us convert that truck, but they're going to stay on board, and they're going to continue to help us drive this initiative forward with helping us with the fuel. And if the truck breaks down, they're going to help us fix it. And before Bob retires, I'm going to have him sign on the dotted line. So we didn't stop there either, and we're continuing to engage larger networks of farmers. We're continuing to pursue greater markets. We're getting those farmers out into the restaurants. We're getting the farmers into the classrooms. We're getting very creative on some of the products that we can use. I have to thank Colette again for figuring out that Kohlrabi, which we can grow here in Minnesota, was a great substitute for jicama, for vegetable sticks for the kids, and we're moving, you know, hundreds of pounds of kohlrabi into schools this year and last year as vegetable sticks for kids. And so that's some of the kind of creative thinking and some of the creative partnerships that we're working on, and in order to move this forward. Somebody told me yesterday that I have a 3-year trajectory for sustainability for the Food Hub, and she told me I didn't give myself long enough, that it's going to take about 5. And I said, well, we'll see about that.
I think you covered the rest.